and then I have a sit down coffee meeting and just map out exactly like what it has to look like, the requirements for the promotion. Some of this is, by the way, breathing belief into them, Kurt, because some people just don't think they can do it. So sometimes we have to breathe belief into people and believe that they can do it before they believe in themselves. So I sit down with them and I just help them map out the price, and I help them figure out strategies to earn their promotion. Everybody can do their own promotions. I like the idea of helping people get to the RVP contract and taking a replacement later. I think somebody could be a regional leader for a long time if they're just worried about getting a great replacement in place. So one of my best RVPs, Nate Keller, still owes me a replacement. So his first RVP promotion will go back to me. I've got a few other ones like that. And I like that because they get the contract earlier. They can make more money while they build a business. And then they give up a good replacement, not just throw a few people out there and hopefully somebody follows through. So if you're like, hey, I got to transition from recruiting to AUM, again, I don't know that you want to do that. I think you want to do both, but you absolutely just have to have a marketing plan that enables you to get in front of a lot of people. Of course, social media is part of that, but get in front of a lot of people in a quick period of time. And me personally, when I started, it was always, I had to have at least 1,000 names and numbers on the list. So that was what my wife and I were focused on from day one. And I set up my block calendar. I know I've talked about this a million times, but 4 hours. So again, block calendar for me when I was full time is I would study from 6 to 8 until I was fully licensed. Then I would go 8 to 12. I would do all my marketing, lead generation. I would never take a day off. I would rotate those so it didn't feel like Groundhog Day. And then from 1 to, take a lunch, and then maybe 1 to 4, I would do interviews or F&As. Then I would have dinner with my family and family time, and then do 2 to 3 F&As at night. I think in today's world where more people have flexibility with their jobs, it's not necessary for people to work every night. I think people can build a business here with banking hours at this point because more people are flexible and we've got Zoom. But the reality is success is scheduled, right? Everybody wants like a shortcut. How do I do this? How do I do that? I just tried to make sure that it was scheduled in advance. So, Kurt, I don't know if anyone's going to entertain other questions that we have in, but hopefully that helped the person that messaged me on Telegram.
Awesome. I'll only add a thing or two to that, and then we'll go to Q&A. I'm 100% on track with you. I mean, I took it when I started. My responsibility to pay the bills is me. I can't depend on other people. I can depend on myself. So my job is to have my schedule pegged constantly, right? I mean, at the start, I worked 7 days a week. I would do Sunday night appointments. I would do whatever I had to do because I knew I needed to stay in business long enough to build a business. And many people want to do the banker's hours thing. You and I do banker's hours things now. But I mean, that isn't how you start, because if you start that way, you'll have a good job somewhere else at some point. Good keyword there. So for us, you're a master marketer compared to us. We don't do the marketing like you do. You're superior there significantly. Our focus was referrals. Okay, we got, I would say pretty good at getting referrals. I had hundreds of referral letters that I never used because I would only work the best 2 or 3 or 4 from each group. And we just focused on getting referrals constantly. And that led to some centers of influence that led to people sending us people. And today that's all we do. I'm not a big social marketing guy. It's not wrong, so don't read between the lines. That's just not my style. That's the great thing about Primerica. There's a zillion styles. Find your style and get great at it. Pick some pieces from other people, but you don't have to change your world because somebody says something different. I think back to the first point again. I think that people today want their team to do it for them. And you need to lead by example and show your team, here's how you make a living, here's how you make and save money, here's how you make this thing happen. You don't hope it does, no, you make it happen. You take the bull by the horns and you get after it and you work a behind off, and then you start controlling your schedule and taking more time off when you want to. But at the start, doesn't mean your priorities are wrong. My priorities are God first, my family, my business, but for a while, you're not balanced. Doesn't mean your priorities are wrong when you're not balanced. Okay, you just kind of spend a lot more time in one area. Now people go, man, you're only in two times a week. Don't you ever work anymore? Hey, before you said I work too much, and now you say I don't work enough. I mean, don't worry about what other people think. Do what you are convicted is right, and just full on attack. Take the best and leave the rest. Every time you watch MPI, every time you go to a meeting, don't change your business around because of everything you heard. Glean something out and add that to what you're doing. And because I think too many people spend their career start, stop, and get tired.
100%. Yep.
There's no reason to get tired.
Yep. Take a couple things from each Thursday and implement it right away. And to Kurt's point, I think everybody wants the fruit of a business bill, but they don't want to pay the price. And to his point, I mean, I hated holidays like Memorial Day because I wanted to work every single day, because I wanted to get my business built fast and I wanted to get financially independent fast. So I didn't go to family functions. I didn't really go to anything. It was a talk with my wife and said, I'm going to grind for the next three to 5 years. So I'll never have to grind again. And that's what we did. So, it's worth it. So I think you can take 20, 30 years to build a business because you're very part-time and you're like a roller coaster that start and stop all the time. But in today's world, I do think you can go to IBA to RVP in 6 months and go over the ring in 12 months and go over 300,000 your second year. And I think the $1 million ring is the new 100,000. If somebody's working in today's Primerica with the wall of wealth moving, $1 million a year is not that hard. You don't actually need a team to do $1 million a year. You need to be probably working 40 to 60 hours a week, which work is defined as you're either on an appointment, you're setting an appointment, you're not wasting time on any of the stuff that you should have a staff do. But, we're in different times. I know when I started, it was like, man, if I found $1 million a quarter, Kurt, I was like, oh my God, securities everywhere. And I'm like, if we don't get $1 million a week, we're probably fooling around. So it's just a different animal. So I don't know who's helping us take some more questions that come in. Mark, do you see any questions, buddy?
One question was specifically to Kurt. Mike answered it to some degree, but what is your referral system? Or do you have some thoughts on that, Kurt?
Sure. Well, back when I was in the field all the time, the referral system was that we would talk to people about referrals at the start of the presentation, right? And if you like what we're doing, we'd like the opportunity to earn referrals. That's a form of advertising. Advertising costs lots and lots of money, and we don't feel we should be spending your money to put us on TV to say we're a good people. We think happy, satisfied clients talking about a positive experience is superior. So we'd like to ask that of you, if we can help you, if we can do good things for you. And we would average between 10 and 20 referral letters with handwritten PSs. I know this is a different time, but that's how we started. And then we would figure out where the best ones are. We'd send them out. Now today it's a totally different world, but that's what we did when we started. A referral was expected. If I can show you something good, referrals were expected from you. And I know a lot of people have or had trouble with that. And it's like, listen, if I met with Ben and his wife and made an $800,000 difference in their retirement plan, you don't think I'm worth 10 or 15 names? Really? You got to be kidding me, I hope, right? He doesn't know anybody. People say, well, I don't know anybody. Well, here's a great way to do that. Hey, Ben, open up your cell phone. How many contacts are in there? And then he goes, whatever, 2,800. Okay, great. What's the first name only? Who's the first person? John. Ben, do you think John's the type of person that would be interested in getting out of debt sooner or retiring early and more comfortably? Great. Why don't we start with him? And I would just ask that question, and pretty soon it's like, okay, And our record, Mark, we got 122 referrals on one appointment. Okay, it was a competitive guy I used to play softball against, and he was filling up the list, and I said, "Man, I wonder if you could set the record." What's the record? I just told him some number, and he goes, "I can beat that." And he 122 in one appointment. So
Incredible. Yeah.
today it's word of mouth. If you give great customer service to people, your clients talk. They're at their job. You and Ben are at your job, and you guys are having lunch, and you go, "Man, my wife and I got our investment statement. It went down. We don't know what's going on. We never talk to our guy. When he talks, we can't understand him." Between bites, Ben goes, "Really? Gosh, my wife and I meet with our financial guy every year. I mean, he talks in normal words. We're making money. We feel good about our future." Without blinking, you say, "What's his name? What's his number?" And then Ben calls our office. So that's what it is today, but it started by an expectation, asking questions, and sitting and getting them. Not, "Okay, I'll get back to you next week to get them." Next week never comes. You do it now.
Great. Excellent. How about you, Ben, as it relates to a different question, unless you want to comment on that one, I've got a different one.
No, go ahead.
The question is, at what point would you recommend somebody go full-time? Is it at an AUM point, debt, whatever?
Yeah, so
What are your thoughts?
excellent question. So again, also probably a sit-down meeting, just like the RVP conversation I talked about earlier. And there's a few other questions on this chat I want to get to because I think they're good ones. But with the full-time situation, I do look at their finances, Mark. I do want them to have a decent emergency fund. So if they make 10 grand and then 1 grand the next month, that they're not freaking out about money. I would rather the transition be a little bit slower than faster, because what you don't want is they're not ready. They go full time, and then because they're struggling, maybe the first couple months, they go back and get a job, and then we never see them again. So I think they've got to practice what they preach. I think they have to have a good emergency fund. I think they've got to be obviously fully licensed, including their securities license. And then I just like to see consistently. For me, I didn't go full time personally until I was making about 100 grand part time, because I wanted to replace my income. That was very important to me. So again, when today's world and there's so much opportunities, I think replacing the income. Now, sometimes there's a couple where maybe the other spouse has the base salary and the benefits, and maybe makes it easier for that person to go full time quicker. But I would say to that person, you better go out and make some money. um, I just see too many people that it's like, man, they're just not taking it seriously enough. I mean, you got to treat it like a job until it turns into a business. And I would recommend every one of you to go into the office every day. Just personally, I still do it. My office is 10 minutes from my house. I work from my office. I want some separation between my office and my home. When I try to turn my phone off when I'm home with my kids. But you're fooling yourself if you think you're going to be disciplined at the house. Like, you'll go grab a workout if you have a gym, or go make something to eat, or do the laundry, or help out your spouse with something. And then those of you that are full time, it's probably more FOOL, just because you have nothing else to do. But the reason your spouse is giving you all this big honey-do list is they don't really see that you're not establishing the boundaries. Like, when I was working, my wife knew not to bother me. Like, our rule was, if it's very important, you call me twice. Otherwise, I'm not answering. I'm not picking up, because I'm focused on building a business. There's this book called The One Thing. It's an incredible book for our business, because in society it's celebrated that to multitask, which that's the worst thing you can do in business, right? So if my marketing time, Mark, is 8 to 12, I'm not checking my email, checking my text, looking at social media. I'm focused on making my phone calls. I used to call it smile and dial, but um, I just think just people don't take it seriously enough. So to Kirk's earlier point, a business owner focused on results, an employee focused on appearing busy so you don't get fired, right? But man, people think like an employee. Like they want off nights, they want off weekends, they never want to work a holiday in Primerica. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to get financially independent, get a business built, and transition from hard Primerica to easy Primerica. There was a message on the chat. Let me go back to that question. Some of these were good. Um, Double booking, I always double booked because, when I was transitioning from part-time to full-time, I never wanted somebody else to be in control of my calendar. That was extremely important to me. So again, what the doctor's offices do, if you don't show up, sometimes they still charge you for it, right? We're not going to charge people, but your client is not going to get upset if you double book. You call and apologize. Hey, Kurt, my staff accidentally double booked me. Do you have any flexibility? Really sorry, but we have a really strong demand right now. Like, that's not going to tick somebody off. Okay. I would rather apologize that we have to move their meeting to a different time than not double book and then you have your entire calendar kind of blow up on you. Someone asked a question, what do I read for market updates? I subscribe to a few newsletters through Stansberry and Associates out of Baltimore, Maryland. And they sent a lot of really good daily emails. I'm not on social media, but I am on. I won't ever post, but I do follow a few people on X that maybe I can post that in the MPI Telegram later today, the people that I follow the most, because some people on X really, really good content. I think you got to be careful where you get your information from, especially mainstream media. I find to be mostly garbage. I'll also tell you that I think you got to be careful which wholesalers in our business that you get information from, because unfortunately, some of them are more salespeople than true professionals that care about education and really talking about different strategy. I'm not saying they intentionally do that, but I think some of the ones that we have are better than others. Um, but you just have a desire, like I had a desire to like it's important for me. I just view it as stewardship. Like Mark and Kurt, I don't know how often you guys kind of review your personal finances and look at your net worth and all that stuff, but I probably do it way more than work. Most people do, only because I feel like I'm a hypocrite if this is what I do for my livelihood and I'm not thinking about investments weekly, looking at my, you know, financials weekly, looking at my assets, making adjustments. Most of what I've learned to communicate with clients is because I wanted to get financially independent and grow my net worth and make good investments because I wanted to practice what I preached. And my faith is very important to me. There's 2,000 scriptures in the Bible that talk about money. God cares a lot about stewardship. Obviously, to me, it's all his to begin with. I'm just a steward of it. But I think the reason a lot of people aren't more blessed and there's not a whole lot of abundance in their life is because they're not managing what they have well. So why would God give me more if I can't even manage what I have? Um, I heard a pastor recently that kind of talked about why, again, I tithe and at least 10%, but why would God trust me with souls if he can't even trust me with money? And that hit me like a ton of bricks. Like this particular pastor won't have any leadership in his church if they're not tithing, right? So again, I take it very serious, because again, I just don't want to be a hypocrite. So I just, the people in Primerica that make a lot of money and then buy fancy cars and not investing, it's hard for me to understand that. I wouldn't want that to be my financial advisor. There's nothing wrong with great cars, by the way, but I think you should care more about your investment accounts and what they look like than stuff.
Hey, adding a thing onto what Ben just said.
What other questions
about-
do we have?
Yeah.
Hey, adding a thing to what Ben just said about, you know, people aren't focused, or I mentioned earlier about you're unbalanced for a little while. You know, you see people that say they want to grow their business, but they can't be at training because their 2-year-old's got a birthday party or their cousin's got a birthday party. And I'm on Ben's side on that. I missed a bunch of those. My wife went to them. In the first few years, I missed a bunch of those because guess what? I don't think that my nephew is going to recall I wasn't at his 2-year-old birthday party. I'm pretty sure he doesn't remember that today. Okay. But I think probably like the things that we've done for them, they probably remember that, you know. And if you're you know, my oldest son's birthday is on May 7th, right? Well, I don't think if we celebrated it when he was a kid on May 11th, I don't think it changed his life one way or the other. But so many people are looking for a reason or justifying why they aren't doing what they're supposed to do. And what I found was I felt guilty if I was spending time in the office but not working. And then when I was doing something else, I'd feel guilty. And you know what? If you're working when you're supposed to be working, you don't feel guilty when you're taking time off. It's okay. My 2 cents.
Good.
That's good. I think,
Mark,
yeah, you mentioned,
you
go
have
ahead.
any-
No,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
I was just going to say if you noticed any other good questions here that we can tackle.
There's several, but they're kind of add-ons. People are asking questions as follow-ups. Like, this is a great one. You were talking about your faith and tithing earlier. This question says, this really confuses me. Is it on gross or net? I mean, I can address it, but go ahead.
I personally do gross.
Yep.
I
Us
mean,
too.
you know, that's just my conviction. I've never outgive God. And quite frankly, I talk about this hundreds of times. You guys have probably heard me say this, but if you want your income to grow, you've got to have bigger giving goals and investing goals, because the challenge is people just get super focused on paying their bills, right? Mark, I know you live in an area of Michigan where the cost of living is probably less than a lot of areas. So to make your money in that area, you're probably in the top, whatever, 1%. So unless you have bigger giving goals and investing goals, or it's a stewardship thing where you want to set example, like what's the reason to grow income, right? I'm going to go over 1.4 soon, not because it changes my life, but because my buddy Campanella, I can't have him go to 1.4 before me. Is that a stupid reason? Yeah, it's a stupid reason. But he's a friend of mine, and I don't really, I could care less. I don't watch anybody's numbers. I could care less, but he calls me all the time. I got to beat you to 1.2. I got to beat you to 1.3, and he hasn't done that yet. And so I'm going to beat him to 1.4 because I know he's already thinking about it. Right? And maybe that's the sports in me, but some of you need to think about competing, because maybe that's something that drives you more than paying the bills. I don't think paying the bills sounds very fun. Now, if you making more money gets you out of your job and fires your boss, that's probably great. If you make more money to retire your wife, I know that was a big motivation for me. I never wanted to have somebody else tell my wife what to do. So I retired her on very, you know, she was in pharmaceutical sale with Pfizer, very talented, but I didn't feel like, if I didn't feel like making phone calls, I'm like, what am I, we already had a conversation that she'd be a stay-at-home mom. What am I not going to deliver on that? I think some of the challenge for people is your goals are a secret. Like some people say goals just to impress people on a conference call, impress their upline. But what I did to make it serious is I told my wife and my kids what I was going to go do. And because I believe I'm a person of integrity, I'm not going to tell them something and not deliver. And I also told my team what I was going to do. And most people are too weenies to do that. But I think a lot of this business is what motivates you, what motivates me. We're all motivated differently, but I find giving goals, investing goals, maybe you're learning to compete, right? I think setting an example for my team, Kurt and Mark, is a big part of this, right? How many times have you had better numbers because you realize, hey, it's not what I tell my team, it's what they look at on POL, what I'm actually doing. What I say doesn't matter, just like with our kids. What we do is more important than what we say. But I mean, there's so many things that can motivate you, but you got to figure it out. And I think the principle that's very important and why a lot of people get stuck is you have to have a healthy hatred for where you are, right? So, when I was at whatever, 900, what gave me a healthy hatred for being there and not being over the million? Again, didn't have any financial impact on my life, but I kept having people ask me, when are you going over? And that was annoying. Like, I didn't want to hear that anymore. So like that was the healthy hatred. Like when I was a regional leader, like I didn't want to work out of that office in Lancaster. I wanted to set up my own office. So again, if you have a healthy hatred for where you are, then there's enough pain for you to make the changes to go to the next level. Another key thing would be surround yourself with people that think at a higher level than you. Because if you hang out with 9 broke people, the only advice they're going to give you is how to become the 10th. So several years ago, I tried to strategically play golf with people that their net worth was significantly higher. Many of them outside of Primerica, their businesses were significantly bigger. Their incomes are significantly bigger just because it's a different conversation. And you hear something that stretches you, right? I was at the PGA Championship on Sunday down in Quail Hollow, and my Corbridge guy mentioned, hey, I think Lashner is going to do 30 million over the next couple months in this product. I'm like, I know Howard's a worker, but I'm like, okay, if Howard's doing it, can I do it? Right? But the point is, I think sometimes we don't realize how much bigger our potential is above where we are. But because we're not stretching ourselves in some of the areas that I'm talking about and getting uncomfortable, our business doesn't grow. So it's not that those of you that are in a building hierarchy and you go to a meeting and nobody's doing securities, so you do a little bit of securities and they recognize you. It's like the person that's in a small office. Your numbers are probably mediocre, but you're comparing your numbers to everybody else in your office, so then you feel better. Well, but your potential is up here. So why don't you find somebody in Primerica that is up here and work towards that instead of comparing yourself to a bunch of mediocre and bad numbers in your office. You're basically a big fish in a small pond. So
there's an old expression that a shark only grows as big as its environment. It adjusts. And if you're in a small fish tank, is what you're describing, right?
yeah.
You're going to get eaten. So a couple of the questions regarding, I know, Ben, you use the word marketing, and I think you use it in place of what most people today use as prospecting. I don't know if that's a fair comparison.
Yeah.
What are your marketing or prospecting plans that you talked about in the morning that you blocked off? What are some of the things you did to build your business?
Yeah, so let me I'm going to post this in the chat later because I was covering this with one of our new advisors recently, so you guys can have it. But I'll just go over a couple of them here with you guys. But again, I talked about the networking where you're finding like 5 great CPAs, 5 great estate attorneys, um, 5 Medicare supplement people, 5 realtors, 5 mortgages. So I started with networking, and Scott shared 2 million a year. I probably get closer to 10 million a year in referrals from professionals. Um, so I was just kind of like, I don't have a problem working hard, but I would love it for more people to just send me referrals, right? So you have the professionals that I network with. You have the raving fans in your client base. By the way, 80% of your referrals will come from 20% of your clients. So go out of your way to just bring them more value, right? Extremely important. Small businesses. Used to call small businesses all day long to help them with their finances. We did a lot of community events, Mark. Now with COVID, that slowed down, but man, there were weeks where we did 4 events a week. And somebody will say, "Well, events don't work." I'm like, well, you're not doing enough. Because some are good, some are bad, but man, we would probably get several hundred names and numbers from the events that we did every week. We did meet and greets at daycares. I didn't, most 9 times out of 10, I didn't recommend 529s for the client because they didn't have emergency fund, they didn't have life insurance. But that was the hot button that got the meeting, right? We used to do a lot of seminars and workshops. Like, I'll post it, but what I would do, like, I think there's 20 different ways to generate leads, in my opinion. What I tell our new people is, I'm going to teach you all 20. I'm going to hold your hand through the process. What you're going to find is you're going to probably find your 5 favorite, and then you rotate those every day so it doesn't feel like Groundhog Day. And of course, one of them would be either a private Facebook group or private messages on social media is probably one of them in today's world. I don't do any of that. Like Kurt doesn't do any of it, but if I had to start, Kurt, if my AUM was 0 and had 0 clients, and I was starting Primerica today, then I would have to get on social media and actually use it. Thank God I built a client base before that, but I would be forced to get involved in it. Probably
Well, here's the thing. Here's the
have
thing.
my
the secret
wife
about
manage
that,
it, but
Ben, the secret is you would do what you had to do.
100%.
Not what was, not what was
it takes.
comfortable, not
Yeah.
what I wanted to do,
Yeah,
what I have to do.
yeah,
I heard a very successful businessman. We were talking about our sons at that point in time, and he said to me, "Men do what they're supposed to do, boys do what they want to do." It was like, okay, good, got that. Yeah.
Well, it's funny, to your point earlier, you guys were both going on about success. I think, Ben, you said success is scheduled, right? It's, in other words, it's a behavior. When do I go full time? You can have a perfect plan to go full time, but I've seen, my hierarchy over the 40 years I've been here, I've seen people with lots of money saved blow their savings because they never went to work. I've seen people that had good skills, but they never actually did the appointments. And I think the key is taking that time, as you said, Kurt, is just, you got to figure it out. I mean, it's figuring out who to call. These plans are wonderful, and I think you should post them, but people have to actually try. They've got to go risk a little failure, risk a little insult, a little ego hit. They got to risk that kind of stuff, and you got to fight through it and eventually become good enough you can have a conversation with anybody. And so,
yeah. And then during that marketing time, guys, like I had my list prepared in advance. Some of you start your marketing time, like I had my names and numbers on a list, and for 4 hours, I would nonstop make calls. And the difference between me and a lot of people is, Mark, I didn't go home until my appointment calendar was double booked.
right.
It wasn't, oh, at 5 o'clock, I'm going to go home and spend time with my family. Again, I know this isn't a sexy conversation, but the difference is, 3 years to me is all it really takes of consistent block calendar to build a foundation where you never have to work hard again. But like, what's the alternative? We rent our life away to a company for 40 years and the only equity we have is in our 401k. I just think people make the success take a lot longer than what it needs to take. Right? If you had a sales job, I can tell you right now that if you were in corporate sales, because I've been there, your quota would be significantly higher than all of our promotion guidelines by far. And the difference is we get our RVP promotion. If that was corporate, they would actually start to increase all your quotas and decrease your payouts. That's how it works in corporate. Here they don't do that, right? If you send Primerica more checks, they're going to send you more checks. But I just took it the first 3 to 5 years, I took it very serious. I thought about what happens if I have to work for somebody for the rest of my life? What happens if I can't retire my wife? What happens if I can't become financially, like all those things, right? I think it's healthy. I think the thing I'll